It was meant to be the end of an era. In 2017, the world said goodbye to Cassini, the legendary spacecraft that had spent years gracefully orbiting Saturn, revealing a world once hidden behind a veil of distance and mystery with every orbit. Cassini transformed a distant blur into a breathtaking, dynamic giant. We celebrated its discoveries, honored its silent vigil, and finally watched as it made its dramatic dive into Saturn's atmosphere. Fiery finale to a historic mission. But what if that wasn't the end? What if, in its final moments, Cassini captured something so extraordinary, so unsettling, that the data was quietly buried under the guise of irrelevant telemetry? And what if that secret didn't surface through the hands of scientists, but through the cold, impartial intelligence of a newly developed AI entity trained to detect what humans overlook? The final image Cassini took before its destruction wasn't just another scientific snapshot. It was a message, hidden in layers of data, concealed in plain sight, encoded in patterns we weren't meant to decipher until now. And now that it's been found, it may already be too late to look away. In the mission's closing weeks, Cassini was directed to dive into uncharted territory, the narrow gap between Saturn and its innermost rings. It was a maneuver both daring and dangerous. No probe had ever flown so close. On each pass, Cassini hurtled through clouds of dust and debris, collecting data on gravitational forces and magnetic fields, while streaming every bit back to Earth in real time. As the end drew near, NASA engineers prepared the spacecraft for its final descent, one last plunge into the crushing depths of Saturn's atmosphere, where heat and pressure would tear it apart. In those final hours, Cassini followed a meticulous script, capturing high-resolution images of Saturn's cloud bands and polar regions. Among those final transmissions was one particular image unassuming, a wide-angle view of the planet's south pole taken just moments before signal loss. At the time, it seemed routine, nothing out of the ordinary, but buried within the raw data of that last photograph was something no one had expected. No one could explain dot until now. Just 27 pixels, that's all it was. Barely noticeable to the human eye, nothing more than digital noise. But buried within those 27 pixels was a configuration that didn't match the atmospheric patterns surrounding it. At the time, it meant nothing. But years later, to an advanced pattern recognition AI, it meant everything. Fast forward to today, in a quiet, isolated lab far from public scrutiny, a next-generation quantum AI system named Aegis was being trained to analyze deep space datasets just for visual anomalies, but for hidden mathematical structures beneath the pixels themselves. As part of its initial trial, engineers fed Aegis the full archive from the Cassini mission, thousands of images, most of which had been cataloged, studied, and deemed uneventful. But when Aegis processed Cassini's final image, the very last photo it ever took, it flagged it immediately. Not because of what was visible, but because of what the image suggested. The area once dismissed as a typical atmospheric swirl was anything but. Aegis detected a symmetrical distortion, pattern subtle, precise, and entirely inconsistent with Saturn's chaotic weather systems. These weren't compression glitches. They weren't camera errors. They had structure. Using spectral data embedded in the image, Aegis reconstructed a three-dimensional model of the anomaly. What emerged wasn't a storm or a vortex, it was a lattice, a perfectly geometric formation, suspended just above Saturn's cloud layer. Deliberate, engineered, it didn't look like a natural phenomenon. It looked like a signature, or worse, a surveillance node, concealed within the swirling madness of a gas giant. Music rises. The AI's reconstruction sent immediate shockwaves through the small team of scientists overseeing the analysis. What Aegis uncovered wasn't just symmetrical, it matched a structure, known in theoretical physics as a non-Euclidean toroidal array, a pattern typically associated with energy fields used in advanced propulsion systems. In plain terms, this wasn't a natural formation, not even close. Even more unsettling was the persistent frequency echo embedded in the radio bands Cassini had been monitoring during its descent. For years, this signal had been dismissed as background noise. But Aegis detected something no one had seen before: harmonic modulation, an artificial signature, a fingerprint. It wasn't just sitting there. It was transmitting something, Whether it was communication, energy, or surveillance, no one could say. But the implications were chilling. This object or construct had been there all along, silently orbiting with Cassini around Saturn, and yet it never triggered a single alert, not once, which left the team with a terrifying possibility. Maybe it didn't go unnoticed by accident. Maybe it was designed that way. Maybe it only wanted to be seen. When we were finally ready to understand,